This should be good because the Supreme Court votes 63 to allow President Trump to move forward with purge of the Department of Education.
Yeah, it should be.
So
It's incompetent. It has failed the American public in the task of educating its children. It is trying to propagandize them and convert them to being solid, devoted, fanatical followers of the rainbow cult rather than making them into good Americans who are educated, objective, discerning, analytical, and rational and reasonable.
well, the Supreme Court on Monday granted the Trump administration's request to temporarily pause an order by a federal judge in Massachusetts that will require the Department of Education to reinstate nearly 1,400 employees who were fired earlier this year as part of the department's efforts to reduce the size of its workforce. In a brief, unsigned ruling, the justices blocked the order issued in May by U.S. District Judge, Joun, who had concluded that the Trump administration's true intentions is to effectively dismantle the department, even though, in his view, it lacked the power to do so.
This bunch of idiots has taken a mechanism, public education, that got America to the top of the world, and it has corrupted it from an educational device into a recruitment and indoctrination device for the rainbow cult. It is a disgrace and a shame for that to have happened.
So the Supreme Court basically paused that federal judge order that went against Trump.
Yeah, it's way down the totem pole. In other words, what it is it's a clerk at the counter, and the clerk's got a supervisor, and the supervisor's got a boss. So you're dealing with the entry level clerk that's sitting there chewing gum, talking about she's bored, wants to go smoke a cigarette. That's what you're dealing with in terms of the system. A circuit court judge, not a district court appellate justice, and certainly not the U.S. Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. Well, Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissented
Of course she would.
In a 19-page opinion that was joined by Justice Elena Kagan and, of course, your favorite head scratcher, Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Let me point out a parallel. That whole thing about birthright citizenship was to undo Dred Scott, which was a horrendous U.S. Supreme Court decision that had the equivalent in idiocracy that these three routinely exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, Justice Taney issued one of the most ridiculous, stupid, and asinine decisions in the history of the U.S. Supreme Court. It directly influenced and led to the U.S. Civil War. And after the war was over, since the Union won, it was still good law. That's why that provision is in the 14th Amendment to specifically undo Dred Scott. And Dred Scott with Taney, Chief Justice, was just as ignorant as this cabal of three ignoramuses who are deep off into the rainbow cult, and their philosophy is by any means necessary.
Who is the conservative woman justice in the Supreme Court who called out Ketanji Jackson, basically calling her an idiot?
I forget. And by the way, Ketanji Jackson is from the Second Circuit, and I say this: they could have appointed Roger E. Clifton, a fine black woman, wise, who has a lifetime history of doing the right thing, coming up with wise decisions on and off the bench, and she should have been nominated. Justice Bernice Donald of the Sixth Circuit, who was a student of mine, somebody I mentored, should have been on the U.S. Supreme Court instead of this head scratching clown that didn't even know what a woman was. And I say this with all due respect, since I don't practice law anymore. I'm retired from it. And I put my law license in an inactive status so the whole bunch of them can go to hell. I'm exercising my free rights as a United States citizen under a Fourth Amendment. Ketanji J. Jackson is an embarrassment.
It was Amy Barrett.
Barrett,
Yeah,
yes.
she basically saying,
Justice Barrett, proud of you.
yeah, it's called her out. So, all right. So, in the 19-page opinion that was joined by the justices, called the court's decision indefensible, writing
Yeah.
that it hands the executive the power to repeal statutes by firing all those necessary to carry them out.
That's part of the process of government, the check and balance. If the legislative body does not like it, then it can override that decision by coming up with new legislation to address it. They have not. That's part of the governmental process, you bunch of idiots. Didn't you? Oh, I forgot. You must have gone to law school if you're on the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, why the hell don't you act like it?
The majority is either willfully blind to the implications of its ruling or naive, but either way, the threat to our Constitution, separations of powers is grave.
And what these clowns of three, the gang of three, are talking about, the three hen house, what they're trying to do is advocate that which will lead to a totalitarian government, most commonly recognized as being fascist, fascisti, Nazis. And some might get it slightly wrong, but they're thinking the right way, communistic.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work.
Also, speaking of education, Chicago public schools forced to lay off 1,458 employees, 432 teachers, and 677 special ed classroom assistants in order to meet a $734 million budget deficit. Chicago has spent over $638 million.
Yeah, you see that right there?
Immigrants.
See that right there? Americans are suffering because somebody's breaking the law and they haven't been prosecuted for it yet.
Right. And so,
by the way, under the circumstances, everything they did with Diddy about denying his initial offer of a $50 million bond should apply to every one of these damn criminals. Oh, well, alleged. They're presumed innocent until proven guilty, but there certainly seems sufficient probable cause to make them stand trial and account.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago Public Schools just announced it's laying off more than 1,400 school-based employees. This includes 432 teachers and 677 special ed classroom assistants. CPS says this is part of its annual workforce planning and budgeting process. Historically, the district says more than 80% of impacted employees have secured new positions within CPS prior to the start of the school year. It's not known if the current $734 million budget deficit will impact that rehiring process. Chicago Public Schools.
So the education system, because listen, the Trump administration, when he came into office, they were basically, the plan was to eliminate the Department of Education. And they're also implementing a lot of, what do you call it? I don't want to say free choice, but parent choice, to where we would pay you what we pay, what the money that we give per student to go to public school. If you want to homeschool your kid, we will give that money to the parent for that child. I think that is great. Or when we talk about charter schools or vouchers, let the parents choose how they want their child to be educated.
Well, you see, we didn't need that when the public schools were allowed to be public schools before they got stolen away from the public. to indoctrinate children in the rainbow cult. This whole thing about, look at what we have. We don't need to learn how to longhand write because they've got cell phones. But we don't need to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide because we have cell phones. How many times does your cell phone run out of battery charge and you can't use it? Or you can't charge it because the local utility company has been allowed to deteriorate in its infrastructure. Okay, the state of Washington, in light of all of the incompetent people trying to practice law, is saying we don't need to have a bar exam because it's discriminatory. How about the governor of Oregon saying we don't need to have children learning their multiplication tables because it discriminates against minorities? What the hell is that kind of garbage? I mean, back when times were tough, everybody learned how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, do long or division, short division, and work a math problem with pencil and paper. That happens all over the world, but for some reason, the presupposition is that minorities in America have become so stupid that they can't they can't deal with it. So we have to dummy down everybody. What is the country doing? I taught school in Los Angeles. I was a playground director before that. I've seen it deteriorate. And it's horrible. And clowns like Bass and Newsom, they are adding to the miasma of the swamp, which is destroying public education. So now any sane parent wants to seek an alternative to public education because it's so bankrupt. Used to be what got the American public above and beyond everything else in the world. And people in World War II in Europe marveled at how competent and wise ordinary Americans were. And they were only used to seeing the aristocracy in Europe knowing things that America commonly knew from top to bottom. That's gone.
Well,
but it's not there.
There are some things that it's a lot of things that I agree as far as what they're trying to do with the Department of Education. One of the things that I disagree is, they are forcing people, they're reinstating for people to pay back their student loans. However, in this new big beautiful bill that Trump got passed, I'm going to play this clip here.
Before you get there, very briefly. Anywhere else in the world, if you had a 4-year college degree, you would be guaranteed admission into the benefits, including the financial benefits of being a middle class. The United States government has a Department of Labor. Hourly wage sections have made these determinations. To be squarely in the middle class, you have to make $125,000 a year as a single person. The cutoff on any aid that Biden Harris had been proposing for relief from student loans was $125,000. The Labor Department's cutoff on the middle class. Below that, you're not middle class. So all of these people in the United States who have taken out this student loan thing to become college educated are not part of the middle class. So what that means, the long and the short of it is, if you were being paid commensurate with your education, there would be no problem paying off your student loans because $125,000 would be the minimum. You got 2 years out of college as compensation for what you did to earn a living. More likely than not, anywhere else in the world, you'd be close to $200,000 a year and you could easily pay back your loans. But in the United States, for some reason, a college education does not equate to an automatic middle class status like it does everywhere else in the world. And we need to demand explanations as to why not.
Well, Not only that, there are a lot of other countries where you could go to college for free or a fraction of what we pay here in America. So it is, to me, it's a Ponzi scheme,
It
and
is.
which is why I don't have a problem. Which is why I don't have a problem with the Trump administration dismantling the Department of Education. Now,
I worked for them.
I want to play this
Remember
clip.
when I told you back when I was doing this intern thing in DC 50 some years ago? And I said I have free time, so I trotted myself down and I got hired by the Department of Education, Housing and Urban Development, and I worked. And when I decided my internship is over, I trotted down to resign so I could go back to California. The director said, "Oh my God, don't do that. You'll completely wreck our budget." So for the next 3 years, I didn't show up one damn day for work. I was in California, 2,000 miles away from DC, and I got a paycheck every month from the Department of Education doing absolutely nothing for 3.5 years. That's what's wrong, and that was 50 years ago, and it's gotten worse.
Yes. So I want to play this clip here because I think this, and this is why people need to do their research about this one big beautiful bill. I think this is great, and people need to look more into this because it could help.
I just found something in the one big beautiful bill that I'm so excited about for Illinoisans. There is now a program called Workforce Pell. As a person who worked for the state's financial aid agency and worked in community colleges helping kids to gain access to financial aid funding to go to pursue trade school and to get shorter term degrees, I'm stoked. So what is Workforce Pell? Let's get into it. It almost got removed because the Senate parliamentarian said it violated the Byrd rule. So then they had to put it in a provision to exclude unaccredited programs and for-profit institutions, which are, so now it got back in, and I am so excited. So what is Workforce Pell? Workforce Pell is new. It's been a discussion for a while, but it was very hard to get through under different leaders. But with Workforce Pell, it specifically caters to for shorter term degrees. Traditional Pell Grants, you have to be enrolled in like 600 hours to be eligible for a Pell Grant. But with the Workforce Pell, it's designed for shorter term degrees or shorter term training, so like 8 to 15 weeks. This means that people who want to go to school to get tech, different types of tech degrees, or to go to 2-year, schools to just pursue different careers that go directly into a trade, they now have a way to leverage Pell Grant. This is a win. This is a major win for our workforce. It's a major win for our young people. It is such a big win for people who need a career shift. Like, this is such a big deal. And I'm so upset that I don't see more people talking about this, because it's such a major shift, expanding Pell Grant this way, because it expands beyond just traditional 4-year education, which really allows for America to get back to work. Trump, they said we were going to FAFO, and they're right. We are FAFO, and because you are doing exactly what we wanted you to do, and having this provision in one big beautiful bill, it's such a big win for like the long-term trajectory of America. I'm just, thank you.
There's a lot in Big Beautiful Bill, and there's a lot that shouldn't be, because politics is politics, and people like to deliver to their constituents, and they have interests that are selfishly local. Now, when I enrolled 60 some years ago in UCLA as a freshman, there was no tuition. All through elementary, junior high, and high school, every year, every new semester, boys and girls, you hear in the first priority of California has always been to make sure that you got educated. In the entire history of California, never once has the educational budget been reduced. Usually it is increased above what is requested. You boys and girls are the state's investment in its future. When I went to UCLA, there was no tuition. There was $105.50, and that covered all free tickets to all concerts, athletic events, recreational functions, free eyeglasses, free prescription, free medical care, all services you needed. That was it. And the catalog was literally this thick. A certain somebody became governor and he campaigned saying this is inappropriate. Too many of these folk are leftists and they're commie sympathizers trying to destroy the country. They don't need a free education. Within 18 months, the catalog literally went down like that. And the tuition jumped from $56.50, which had been reduced per period at that point. It wound up being close to $800 within 18 months, a quarter, which in those days was quite a significant amount of money.
Well, that's all change.
So that, no, I'm just saying it started, but this person became enormously popular and got a lot of influence on the national level. And under his administration, we started seeing the first crowds of homelessness since the Great Depression. And schools no longer, public schools, state institutions were no longer educating children and young adults as part of the human infrastructure. The tuition started becoming ruinous, and those Pell grants and payback student loans started becoming enormous because you didn't need them just to pay for your food and apartments. You needed them to pay for the tuition, and you were still on your own paying for how you were going to live.
Well, people in the chat, they're saying Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly who.
Right.
And I know he's Saint Ron the Reagan, Raygun. And I'm not one of these people who everything Republican is sacred. Reagan did a lot of stuff, and he basically was something else. I remember we were demonstrating, and on 3 separate occasions, 2 days running, we showed up to protest at his speechifications while he was running for governor. And each of those speech occasions, he said, I think the guy's name was Al, I can't seem to find my speech. I guess I'll have to wing it. And he dropped his pencil or pen the same place in each speech. He fumbled the same place. He made the same mess up, said the same thing, and we're looking at each other. This is a script. He's an actor. This isn't a speech. And he said the same thing. I talked to a White House chief of staff, and that individual informed me after we became friends that he had been chief of staff in the White House and he never met the president of the United States, though he had met the person known as Ronald Reagan. And he said Reagan was so off into what we accuse Biden of being that he couldn't have been operating the government, and somebody was actually scripting out what was supposed to be done, and he was an actor, so we didn't have to worry about a real live ego running stuff. Somebody could script that apart, and all he had to do was play the part.
So this woman, when she's bringing up this workforce Pell Grant, I think that is great because a lot of people don't want to go to college for 4 years to get a degree. And a lot of those degrees, you ain't making much money. However, if you go to trade school, whether it's electrician, havoc, you'll start. That's the jobs now in their careers where people are starting off with 80,000, 6 figures, and it could even go higher, especially you open up your own business. So to cut through all of this, you need 600 hours of credits here. No, we're going to give you a Pell Grant so you can go straight to that trade school, get that certification, get that experience, and get right into the workforce. And you're making a living middle class, an actual real life middle class.
But you're not middle class. It's 1980 something, late 1980s. I was involved with a crew of lawyers. It involved a sporting goods location that was in Louisville, Kentucky. They had 3 shifts of 1,500 people per shift per day. 24-hour period. That's 4,500 people. I went and toured this factory as part of this lawsuit I was involved in. 7 years later, I went back as a guest speaker, keynote speaker, and this same company was sponsoring a community reach out. Instead of 4,500 employees, they had 280 because they had totally automated and fired all of these 4,500 people, told them to go get screwed because automation had replaced them. Now, what's happened is 4,000 plus people lost their jobs because some people wanted to be billionaires before they got 50. And they accomplished it. But they were out of work. They lost mortgages. They lost the money that they had put in savings so that they could retire and send their kids through school. All kinds of stuff happened. They were counting on training up their nephew to drive a forklift like they did, or working in the fields like she's talking, not the fields, but in the type of things that she's talking about. And they got pink slips after 19 years, 28 years that said, goodbye, sucker. Thank you for your efforts, but we're downsizing for corporate profitability. That's been happening all across the country. Now, what's happening with AI?
So you're talking about corporations. And
I know, but the point is we are deep into an episode of everything's got to be privatized. And our problem, which is unique in the industrialized world, whether you're talking about China, Japan, Europe, it doesn't make any difference, is we have said it is a business of private enterprise, not government. And what is that? These people who have been made obsolete by developing technology, computerization, and what it has done to the industrial circumstances of the country. It's not the government's responsibility. It's private enterprise, and private enterprise is totally neglected. Like Japan.
So then what? No. So then what is, when we're talking about education, so then you're telling me if you go to trade school is useless?
Yeah, no, it's not useless in the short term, but you have to understand that
then what is useful?
Okay, what is useful is this, is in a period of time from 1934 to 1944, they had airplanes that had maxed out at 140 miles an hour, 160 miles an hour. They were now worried about breaking the sound barrier in 10 years. In 10 more years, you had breaking the sound barrier. And in 15 after that point, there is an exponential increase in what's happening with technology.
So
do something. Take some courses that'll get you an immediate job right now, and then take other stuff that will prepare you for the long-term situation. So that's not anything against what I've been preaching, but I'm just saying it will get you a job.
Yeah.
It will get you a job right now, but what she's talking about in the long term will kill you off.
No, what she's talking about is what you just said. Get you a job right now, and to save, instead of you having to pay for it out of pocket, get that workforce Pell Grant to get into a trade school to get you a job right now. Once you get working, then if you want to go back for your degree or advance yourself, do so. So it helps you. In other words, you don't have an excuse to say, well, I can't afford college. No, it's a Pell Grant, workforce Pell Grant for you to go get a trade, and you can get a job now and then save your money up and then go back to college and do something else.
Right now, I've got people out in my backyard digging up a root system on a tree that was blown down on the tail end of a tornado. All right. They are viable. We need that. All of them digging the ground for right now. So there is a need. Illegals, anybody else is into that, that's good for them. But soon we will have devices that we don't need hot bodies going to dig into. You wasted time on Beyonce.
No, I didn't. Hold on. No, honey, somebody to mute you. No, I did not. No, I had to mute you up.
Support their families themselves.
No. we're not doing that reverse psychology. No, honey.
No,
We wasted.
you wasted time
No, I
on
did not.
Beyonce
No, I
and
did not.
distractions. I was
No,
talking about relevant stuff. Now we get cut off on the things that count for
no,
people because this is how they feed themselves.
absolutely
And
not.
now let's go.
You wanna sit up here and tell these little long stories
Nah, well, they are
and
important
go down the
stories
yellow brick
because
road.
they are the product of somebody operating at the top of the heap for 50 years and seeing these things that most people never get exposed to. They need to know because the press, this idiot that I was pointing out, I said, is she the reporter or is she the person being interviewed? She was talking bullshit and she could not advise the public. So we are advising the public. I have a doctorate degree. I've done as much as anybody out there, and there are other people that way. We don't get heard. We hear from bullshit artists who are entertainers masquerading as reporters. The American public needs to hear us. That's what I'm doing. But you wanted to talk about Beyonce.
Yes, because it was very educational.
I know Beyonce is an educational, and we need
So
more
let
education
me
now.